Hello, I'm Juliet Mann. Welcome to Global Business Europe. Our top stories. China rides the AI wave as exports surge, powered by chips and rare earths. Imports climb even faster. Oil prices erase earlier gains as President Trump scraps a proposed 20% fee on vessels using the Strait of Hormuz. US inflation cools in June as energy prices fall, but underlying pressures remain. And written in the stars, astrology apps and fortune-telling bars help China's spiritual economy find its magic. China is cashing in on the global AI boom. Exports in the first half of 2026 reached around $2.1 trillion. That's an increase of over 13% compared to the same period last year. The building blocks of the AI revolution, semiconductor chips and rare earths, are driving exports. The strong sales reflect the demand for AI hardware, with China now a dominant global player. China's car exports also hit a new high in June. For the first time in a single month, more than 1 million vehicles were shipped overseas. Total auto exports from the world's second largest economy surged 27% year on year. But imports grew even more than exports in the first half of this year, up more than 22% compared to the same period in 2025. The $1.5 trillion increase has helped narrow China's trade surplus, the gap between what it sells to the world and what it buys. Well, Beijing has highlighted the importance of AI development.
With the rapid development of artificial intelligence, China's trade in AI-related products has gained strong momentum. In the first half of the year, imports and exports of computing hardware grew 56.6%. Meanwhile, smart products such as AI glasses, AI translators, and robotic exoskeletons are rapidly evolving.
Xiaolin Chen is head of international at Crane Shares. Great to see you again. So, exports were strong, imports even stronger. Is that the real story?
27% jump in exports and even larger 36% rise in imports in June. Really a great number for China to deliver in June. This tells us China is, its external sectors remain very healthy. The exports obviously side is being driven, like you mentioned early on, by a surge in high-tech products, AI-related hardware, robotics, autos, and other advanced manufacturing. This is really showing China has been successfully plugged into the global investments in the new technology, despite the tariff discussion and geopolitical issues. I think the important surge is, the import surge is equally important because it suggests, a stronger demand for imports and also components rather than just commodities. That typically indicates factories are ramping up the productions and supply chains, and these are, despite all these shocks from Middle East and high shipping costs, insurance costs that is occurred early in this year. So I think, these are good, strong trade data, shows resiliency, shows China is gathering a successfully momentum on the next trade of AI and technology.
So consumers are spending, factories are producing, and as you mentioned high tech there. AI is driving demand for everything, from chips to rare earths. How is that changing the shape of China's exports?
China's exports has become a very much of... If you look at just China's traditional exports, it will be ordinary, it will be good, it will be on track. But with AI embedded, literally make China become a next level of having an upside surprise. Literally AI effectively make China or become China's next new engine for its exporting sectors. Chips, high-end electronics, servers, networking equipment, hardwares, all these used in AI training, deployments, all seen strong growth. I think now analysts are repeatedly flag these categories as major contributors to the upside surprise in exports in China, and the recent data shows that. I hope that given the strong government policy support, even available fundings and subsidiaries for these companies continue to develop, the trends continue to evolve, I would expect more and more of dominant in shipments in exports orders in the coming months.
Of course, we're all looking with interest at what those GDP numbers will hold. What will they need to show to back up this export and import data we're seeing?
It's a great question. First quarter, the data around 5%. I think in second quarter, given all the data released so far, you would expect the China GDP number would be on target to deliver around 5% GDP. Overall this year, even with all these tensions, geopolitical issues, and so on and so forth that China has faced externally, that I think given the support, given the announcements from the governments in how they would determine to support this domestic economy or supporting this economy to continue to grow, you would expect a 4.5% to 5% GDP growth this year with that target on track.
You talked about analysts. So what are the markets looking for? What number do you think they're going to fixate on the most?
I think a lot of numbers are important. One is monetary policy. Market expect more of interest rate support, and then even tax, even some of the corporate tax support for certain industries in the new technology area continue to support fundamentally bottom up, top down. We don't expect a bazooka moment of here you go, this is helicopter money to happen in China, but rather than more managed, more gradual, more targeted monetary policy to certain industries and sectors, even help them consumption. So that top down, bottom up. In terms of data, import exports are a very good indicator. Hopefully, China can get out of this decrease in CPI inflation number to become inflation again in the near term. That can boost a lot of investor or analyst confidence to say, you know what, the market, the domestic market is back on consuming again. That's also quite of a key part of the puzzle for China to deliver the GDP growth.
Xiaolin Shen, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. Oil prices rose to a one-month high earlier, but they've since eased again after President Trump scrapped plans for a 20% security fee on cargo passing through the Strait of Hormuz. He says the US will instead take investment deals with Gulf states. China has reiterated its call for safe passage through the shipping lane.
China is concerned about the renewed military conflict in the Gulf region and urges all parties to heed international calls for peace and stability, uphold the ceasefire and prevent further hostilities. Restoring safe and normal passage through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible is a shared goal of the international community, and all parties should work towards this objective.
Well, lower energy costs helped push US inflation down in June, with consumer prices recording their biggest fall in more than 6 years. But core inflation, the measure the Federal Reserve watches most closely, was unchanged. Mitch McGann is in New York for us. Hi there, Mitch. So what does this data tell us about the health of the US economy more broadly? And how much is the Iran war weighing on that?
Yeah, good afternoon from New York, Juliet. Well, look, what this tells us is that inflation cooled in June, and not just at the gas station, and that's important here. Fuel prices dropped as tensions in the Middle East eased, but the relief for Americans struggling with the cost of living didn't just come from the gas pump, as I mentioned. If we look at the numbers more closely, the CPI, or Consumer Price Index, for June came in at 3.5%, much lower than May's reading and below what Wall Street had been forecasting. And core inflation, which takes away volatile food and energy prices, was flat in June. That was unchanged. Now, that suggests improvement went beyond cheaper fuel because of the a pause in the war, because prices also fell for things like used cars, car insurance, hotel rooms. They all were down as well. And I think one of the questions we have here is, what does this mean for the Federal Reserve? There has been plenty of speculation that policymakers may look to raise interest rates because of high inflation, but this reading could encourage them to wait a little longer before making a decision. precision like that. In fact, the CME FedWatch tool, which we look at, that tracks market expectations, now puts the probability of a rate hike at the Fed's next meeting at just over 12%, so pretty unlikely according to the market. What I would also say is that readings like this may not continue. The war has flared up again. Brent crude was trading at nearly $85 a barrel a short time ago when I looked, so perhaps this might just be one reading out of many still to come, but we'll have to wait and see for next month's data to have a more accurate understanding of that.
Thanks, Mitch. And of course, we'll hear more about interest rates a little bit later on in the programme with Kate Fisher. But we're hearing from the big banks. Tell me more.
Yeah, we're hearing that the big banks are reporting strong earnings today. Goldman Sachs profit, get this, surged 78% to a quarterly record. Bank of America's profits rose by 27%. Citigroup was up 45%. And JP Morgan climbed 41%. JP Morgan's chief executive, Jamie Dimon, said earlier that business conditions in America are getting close to as good as it gets. He said, we just don't know how long it's going to last. Interestingly here, Jamie Dimon's also spoken about the impact of artificial intelligence on the bank's workforce. He said that his leadership team are going to be having an off-site meeting very shortly where AI is going to be one of the key points of discussion. He says that the bank has reduced headcount by 30 to 40% in some areas of the business, although that most affected employees were offered positions elsewhere within the company. So I think that's one area where we're going to be watching very closely in the coming months to see how headcount at some of these major banks making big profits is going to be affected by AI.
Yeah, automation is going to be a big thing. Mitch McGann in New York, thank you. Paramount's planned merger with Warner Brothers Discovery is facing a legal challenge in the US. 12 states have sued to block the potential $100 billion deal, arguing it could reduce competition. Paramount says the takeover would help it compete in an increasingly crowded streaming market. The US government is handing back billions in tariff payments after a court ruling found some of President Trump's trade measures were illegal. According to new budget data, the US has refunded around $81 billion to companies that paid the tariffs so far this fiscal year. Taiwan's second largest contract chip maker has started mass producing a new type of chip technology at its Singapore factory. United Microelectronics Corporation says the technology, called silicon photonics, could help meet soaring demand for faster connections in AI systems and massive data centres. Singapore's economy grew 5.7% in the second quarter compared with the same period last year. Manufacturing was the biggest driver of growth, helped by a surge in demand for electronics, chips and equipment used to make semiconductors. Shortly after the release of the inflation data Mitch mentioned in the United States, the chair of the Federal Reserve, Kevin Warsh, began testifying before Congress. Inflation has been above the Fed's 2% target for more than 5 years, but he's pledged to make that end.
Number one objective is getting monetary policy right. That's our clear and constant aim, the star we steer by. And if we get policy right, and I can assure you we will, the inflation surge of the last 5 years will be a thing of the past.
Our correspondent Kate Fisher is in Washington. Great to see you, Kate. So, what more did Kevin Warsh have to say on the US economy?
Well, this was his first semi-annual testimony to the House Financial Services Committee. And on the economy, he said the labour market's largely stable, but that the housing market continue to lag. He, as you mentioned there, emphasised that getting monetary policy right was his main objective and that the central bank has no tolerance for persistently elevated inflation and that he wants to restore price stability. He also stressed the bank's political independence, which is interesting given how much pressure President Trump puts on the Fed to do what he says. So he promised to tackle inflation, but he also said the economy's otherwise in a pretty solid shape and it's showing resilience, suggesting it's going to reap the benefits from artificial intelligence investment, highlighting the rapid expansion of AI, noting kind of high-tech spending jumped nearly 25% in the first quarter. And he said that the Fed is looking actively at how this will impact jobs, productivity and inflation. He also fleshed out his task forces he's created to try to review the Fed's operations.
And did he give any indication about future interest rate decisions, Kate?
No, he did not. This is very much not his style. He's intentionally dropped the forward guidance that the Fed used to give, refusing to signal the central bank's next moves regarding interest rates. He answered lawmakers' questions, but reiterated that he was committed to the 2% inflation goal. And he said, you know, he does not believe that Americans should ever have to think or talk about inflation, and that could be a signal, those strong words, that interest rates are likely to remain elevated for the time being. And he did, as I said, address whether if he came under more pressure from Donald Trump to reduce interest rates, he says he would always stick with his mandate that the Fed is a completely independent body, independent from the president, and he would not allow himself to be pressurized by him to lower rates.
Kate Fisher in Washington, D.C., thank you for bringing us up to date. This is Global Business Europe. Still ahead. Could a rare discovery in France change the future of clean energy? Or is it a white elephant?
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN. Welcome back to Global Business Europe with me, Juliet Mann. The headlines. China rides the AI wave as exports surge, powered by chips and rare earths. Imports climb even faster. Oil prices erase earlier gains as President Trump scraps the proposed 20% fee on vessels using the Strait of Hormuz. And US inflation cools in June as energy prices fall, but underlying pressures remain. UK business groups want incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham to cut green taxes on corporate energy bills and speed up support for energy-intensive industries. The Confederation of British Industry and Energy UK say lower costs will boost growth and must be a priority. British businesses pay more for energy than other G7 countries, partly due to net zero investment charges. The sun became the European Union's largest source of electricity for the first time last month. Solar energy generated a record 52 terawatt-hours of electricity in June, a quarter of the EU's total power. 18 EU members also set new monthly records for solar usage, with Germany, Spain and Poland leading the way. Naturally occurring white hydrogen in France could revolutionise clean energy. This natural gas is extracted directly from the Earth's crust without emitting the greenhouse gases associated with hydrogen production in a traditional way. As Neil Cairns reports, it could be a game changer for the global transition to net zero.
Huge reserves of naturally occurring, or white hydrogen, have been found deep underground. Julian, thank you so much for bringing me to this beautiful example of French countryside. But why is this area special to you?
Yeah, as you can see, that's a normal countryside, normal Pyrenean countryside. But the geology here beneath our feet is really special. Water from the mountains seeps into the structural faults, and when it meets the mantle body, really rich in iron, this generates natural hydrogen via a process that is called serpentinization.
How much hydrogen do you think could be here?
Potentially, there is several millions of tons of hydrogen under our feet. So that's really encouraging. But we need to modelize and to image and to quantify more precisely these quantities.
By analysing geological and geophysical data, the areas where hydrogen is produced and stored are narrowed down. Mantle 8 is currently placing a network of seismic sensors across the region. The exact nature of the sensors is commercially sensitive, so we blurred them out. These sensors detect vibrations caused by fluid movement, pressure changes, and other natural geological processes. These are like tiny earthquakes, but they're far too subtle for people to feel. So we were out placing sensors this morning. I'm guessing these little boxes here are the sensors.
Yes, exactly.
How do waves that you record from seismic activity give you an image?
So the point is that the wave speed in the rocks depends on the geology. So this corresponds to stiffer rocks.
So they go faster through the blue rocks?
Exactly.
Right. And then slow is here, where the rock is softer.
Exactly. So by mapping these zones with higher wave speed and lower wave speed, we can decipher what type of rocks lies behind our feet.
Mantle 8 have developed the Horex imaging system, which uses the data to build a picture of the layers underground, allowing them to pinpoint hydrogen reservoirs.
So you have the place of production of hydrogen that should be surrounding this blue body of mantle rocks.
So the hydrogen's created here, and then it can travel through all these faults to these other parts of the mountain.
Yes, exactly. What we need is a geological layer which is able to store this hydrogen, which is somewhat porous, where the gas is inside. So potentially in this area or this area.
The data gathered over the 3 months will help Mantle 8 decide on where to start exploratory drilling in 2028. Natural hydrogen has a very low carbon footprint, and it could even be cheaper per kilogram than green hydrogen.
I think it could be a game changer because natural hydrogen is very low carbon intensity and is also cost effective, so it could be very powerful in terms of energy transition.
Julien Perrotel from French startup Mantle 8, ending that report by Neil Kens on naturally occurring white hydrogen. The spiritual economy, known as xuan shui in China, is booming. That's the growing business of selling spiritual, mystical or fortune-related products and services. The hashtag shui shui has been viewed around 5 billion times on Chinese social media app Xiaohongshu. And it's not just a social media trend, it's become a thriving digital industry. Astrology app CC has been downloaded more than 100 million times, giving users everything from daily horoscopes to personalised destiny readings. And the boom isn't just happening online. Across China's major cities, fortune-telling bars are also surging in popularity, serving tarot readings, astrology and traditional Chinese divination alongside cocktails. Around 80% of China's under-30s have reportedly had their fortunes told. Sally Burdett spoke to Linda Yu from the Shanghai-based marketing agency Red Ant Asia.
This trend is rooted in traditional Chinese practices such as fortune telling, or we say like the formal name is divination, and feng shui, the 5 elements, Taoist and Buddhist auspicious symbols. So its earliest trace can be found in the oracle bone fortune reading of the Shang dynasty. over like 3,000 years ago. The contemporary shui craze, however, is not a religious revival. Rather, it's really just about taking traditional stuff and repackaging it as everyday fun.
Give me some modern-day examples of how this trend plays out, from things that you can buy to experiences you can have.
The ones come to my mind, which is very often seen, are coffee and bubble tea brands. They came out with Lucky Cups and the Weekly Fortune Cup sleeves, and also jewelry brands pushed fortune-turning beads, that kind of products. Makeup brands also did Lucky Shades lipstick promotions, and of course luxury brands, they incorporated feng shui elements into their designs.
What I've been told is that it's spiritual luxury, which sounds like it could be a bit of a contradiction. Just tell us a little bit more about this trend right now and why it's growing.
It's based on the fact that, people here in China are all very pressured. Like global economic growth is slowing and conflicts are heating up, and people worry about losing their jobs to AI. And all of this makes people crave control and meaning.
Give me some examples of where big brands have got on board with this trend.
Like luxury brands, for example, I think Gucci and Louis Vuitton, they've all launched special limited editions for the Chinese New Year, because we have each year we have an animal symbol of that year, so they will relate their special products with the good fortune.
The headlines again. China rides the AI wave as exports surge, powered by chips and rare earths. Imports climb even faster. Oil prices raise earlier gains as President Trump scraps a proposed 20% fee on vessels using the Strait of Hormuz. US inflation cools in June as energy prices fall, but underlying price pressures remain. And that is it. Global Business Europe. Thank you for watching. There's more on all of our stories at europe.cgtn.com, and do follow CGTN Europe on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And you can go to CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code, there you go, it's on the screen, to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. Coming up next on CGTN Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From Orbit Team here in London, goodbye.